You want to influence someone in your favor. You want an event to turn towards you to give you some kind of a reward. You're constantly sending your desires and wishes out into the world all day long, all night long, hoping to win and losing. And you have built up a certain hardened frustration and negative expectation by saying, what kind of a terrible world is this where I can't get what I want? Where whatever I try is met by a strength, a power that is greater than I am, and I get thrown back, sometimes very hurtfully. In other words, I can't win. So many impossible things that I wish to be possible remain impossible. You should be very pleased tonight to hear that what we're going to go into tonight will be something that is possible for you to do. It is something you can start with and something that will change everything in your life. It'll change the way you see yourself, change the way you see the world, change the way you think toward God, change the way you act toward everything on earth, including your own inner states. And that one thing you can do, which will not meet with rebuff, with defeat, if you're sincere, if you really mean it. That one thing you can do is to understand your mind. Really understand your mind. You don't understand it now. Can you be very honest about that at the start? Can you admit really now that you have no comprehension at all of why your mind works so wildly, so madly, why it has so many dark movements in it, why you are indeed frustrated in your desires? Can you understand then that you don't understand presently how your mind operates? If that is your starting place, it's a marvelous starting place because it's an honest one. And no self-transformation can ever proceed unless you start on the basis of self-honesty, which is to see yourself as you actually are, not as you imagine you are. I'm going to give you an illustration that will precede a certain method by which you can indeed understand your daily mind, so that you're not a slave to the wrong parts of it. You've noticed, I'm sure, that as you go through your day, that your mind operates correctly sometimes. Sometimes it operates very incorrectly, dragging you down with it, dragging your spirits down with it. Listen then to the following introductory illustration. There was a man who owned a home overlooking a freeway. Wide highway below his home, short distance below it. And he had a large window in front of it, so where he could stand in front of his window and see the cars and trucks pass by. One day he got a knock on the door and went to it, and two businessmen introduced themselves, and they came in and they said, "We're businessmen operating a certain survey company, and we'd like to put it bluntly, we'd just like to hire you for a certain service. And we noticed that your home overlooked the freeway down there, and we'd like to hire you to do the following. All you have to do is certain hours of the day, sit in front of your window with pencil and pad, and make certain notations of trucks as they pass by. That's all you have to do. Sit there for a certain time, as we will tell you in detail later, and you see a truck carrying tires go by, you note on the paper that a certain hour a truck carrying tires went by. That's all there is to it. A few minutes later, you see a truck going by hauling furniture. You put furniture truck there. A little later, you see a truck hauling cattle from the farm. You put cattle truck down. A little later, you see a truck hauling several automobiles. You put that down. That's all you do. You just make a notation of what you saw down the highway below. And of course, we'll pay you for it. And when you turn in the information, they'll feed it into a computer, and it will give us certain benefits in promoting business and making it more efficient. So the man said, fine, that's very good. I'd like to do that. It's interesting work. And so he did. And so for the next 2 or 3 weeks, under detailed instructions, he sat at the window with pad and pencil, and every few minutes he'd just make a note as he'd been instructed to do. Truck with hay on it, truck with machinery on it, truck with vegetables from the farm on it. Made notes. And finally, his work was over. And they came back, took all his notes, and paid him, and that was the end of his experience. But he was a human being. And human beings have troubles. And he had his troubles. He had bad and strained relationships with other people. And he just worried a lot about the slightest thing. Just the smallest sight out into his yard, for example, could make him worry about whether they have to put new pipes in. He found plenty of things to worry about. He was a troubled man, like every other human being. And this went on for a long time. And everything he tried to find peace of mind, to understand his mind, everything he tried failed to work. He continued to be as worried, as concerned as he was before. As a matter of fact, it seemed to him that things were getting worse instead of getting better. He tried religious readings. He tried group therapy. He tried listening to lectures. He tried everything that society offered to help him understand his own mind and be free of his raging mind, but he was not free. On and on it went. Nothing changed in spite of his fierce application to his studies and his religions and philosophies. In his heart, he knew he was the same man when he started, which was very nice honesty on his part. Finally, he ran out of exterior teachers, exterior helpers. And he looked at all the books in his library, in his home. And he looked at all the study courses he'd taken. And he looked at all his notebooks. And he knew there was no help there. And his desperation grew, because if he couldn't get help where it was normally offered, where he was going to find an answer to his awful, awful heartache and confusion. He just didn't know. And then one day, and he didn't know how it came to him, but one day the following idea came. That was a very interesting employment I had a while back, in which all I had to do was sit at the window and watch the trucks go by and note their contents, note the cargo. Quite interesting. And he wondered whether he might apply that inwardly, whether he might do the very same thing of noting the contents of his own mind, of his own thoughts as they went by. So that's well worth trying. I can do this 24 hours a day wherever I am. I can practice internally what I did externally for employment. And so he did. He noticed the next time he worried about the water pipes out in the front yard, the next time he worried, he stood apart and saw the worry, and he knew that he was worried. Before, he didn't. All he did was worry about it. And he now knew the difference between simply worrying and knowing, being aware that he worried. He began to see it was a different process altogether. And it went on to other things. Even his anxiety over his inability to change himself, to be happy. He even saw that that was a thought that went by through his mind. And he saw a very interesting and helpful parallel between his employment and what he was doing now. For example, one time he saw a load of wild animals being shipped to a zoo when he had been employed and was watching the highway down there. And he said, now, when I saw that shipment of wild animals, I could see them in the cages down there on the backs of flat trucks. I saw the tigers and the lions. I saw all these fierce animals. All I did was see them. I noted the contents, which was that it was a cargo of wild animals. I certainly didn't get scared. The animals, those animals down there had nothing to do with me, no matter how fierce they were. They had no connection with me. I was simply witnessing the fierce animals, not being attacked by them. They were simply going by. And he noticed other similarities, that when he was up there in his window watching the trucks go by, he was simply an observer of the whole process, not being part of it at all. A truckload of furniture would go by, and he said to himself, now wouldn't it be ridiculous of me while I was being employed, wouldn't it be ridiculous every time a truckload of furniture went by, wouldn't it be strange if I said, I want that furniture? I didn't say I must have that furniture. I looked, and very impersonally, I said, there goes a shipment of furniture, and I made a note of it. And that's all I did, is notice it. I didn't have any emotional chain to it at all. I wasn't fearful. I wasn't desirous. I wasn't afraid. There's no negative emotions at all going through me. No desire. And as he kept this parallel in mind, he thought of a phrase. And the phrase was caught thought, because that's what he was doing. He caught the thought, caught thought. And the rhyme wasn't bad either. And he said, that's a good way to remember what I'm trying to do, to get some little brief phrase like that, to remind me that I had better catch more thoughts, catch the deeper ones, the ones that are more subtle, ones connected with sex, for example, that are so subtle, because there's a lot of false shame connected with them, perhaps. So he remembered the phrase, the method of caught thought. And the more he practiced it, the more he realized an astonishing thing. That by him simply doing what he could do to understand his mind, repeat, by only doing what he could do, the possible, it's possible to begin to try to understand why and how things move up there. Just by doing that, by doing something right, which is possible to be done, that his inner state changed. And when worries came up, for example, again, the water pipes out in his yard there, he knew that that was a worry thought, and the more he knew that, the less power it had over him to shake him and to make him think that he was going to lose something. So that he can think toward all exterior things, all the daily things that he has to do and that you have to do. All he had to do was to think about them from a practical viewpoint. If the water pipes in the yard need to be changed, then you change them yourself or call someone and change them. And that is the end of it, because this is the nature of life when we're in a physical world like this. We take care of the things, but let me ask you a question at this point. Do you really think that God, the truth, the reality, has condemned you to unconscious self-laceration for the rest of your life? Self-whipping? Do you really think that that is a necessary state for you to endure and suffer from all day long? Now, I had better add a very important point at this point. Are you so in love with worrying over the water pipes, over a human relationship, over the future? Are you so entrenched, confined in your own mind by all these worries that you prefer them and want to go go back to sleep and want to shake away people, push away people who try to shake you awake. And you don't know what you are doing to yourself. One purpose of your being here is to know, to understand how, because you have neglected the study and comprehension of your mind, that your mind will take full advantage of your laziness and your lack of the wish to develop. Now on with it. Worry, let's use that as a generalization, which you all have. You all worry, and those of you watching this film all worry. You're not happy, you're not free. And if you're even if you criticize the truth, if you have something critical to say about a presentation of truth, can't you ask yourself why you are worried about hearing the truth? Shall I tell you why you're worried and why you're sarcastic? Because you fear that God will take away your miserable, egotistical life. Now, I'm saying this as a fact, not in criticism of you. I'm saying that as a fact, you don't understand what's going on inside you, inside your mind. If you did understand them, you wouldn't have this sour spirit. And you wouldn't try to lead other people away from the truth, which you may now be doing. In short, you would no longer be an enemy of your own life here on earth. How's that for a thought? Maybe that startles you just a little bit, and it should. Can you picture yourself as being an enemy of your own life here on earth? Question. Now watch how you answer this. You watch very carefully your mind as you answer this. Can any dark mood, such as depression, such as vicious criticism, such as snaring, can that be right for you, or is it wrong for you? Now you have to start doing some thinking for yourself. Don't you dare sit there and tell me, and don't you dare sit there and tell yourself that any sour spirit you have toward the truth that is setting you free, don't you dare tell me that that is good for you. How can the bad be the good? And I'll tell you your problem. You haven't even advanced to the point yet where you know the difference between giving yourself healthy impressions and giving yourself sick impressions. I am telling you here tonight, and those of you watching this film, I'm telling you, you had better start standing aside and seeing how you are identifying with those passing thoughts instead of standing aside and pushing them away in the sense that you're not accepting them being yours. You are embracing a cage full of wild animals. Doesn't that explain to you why you're so nervous living with yourself? You are apprehensive, you know, living with your own inner self, are you not? Can you tell the truth about that? You will begin to understand your mind, which will then instruct you on both ordinary life and higher life. You can begin to understand it, and that very understanding is a force that works for you. Up to this time, you've been defeated. Remember, we started with that. You're going out in the world wanting to win all these victories, and you find yourself defeated. Here's one place, and again, I always have to add this. If you're earnest, if you're sincere, there's no way you can be defeated, because there's something far more intelligent than you that is on your side, that is winning for you. The first taste of self-change you have will be the internal evidence of the truth of what you've heard here tonight. And evidence that if you just have a little bit of truth, that will give you a little bit of inner change and a little bit of authentic and lasting happiness. And if you have more truth, that's going to give you more change and more happiness. Happiness being nothing more and everything, being nothing more than freedom from false happiness. That is freedom from delusion, freedom from thinking that excitement is right for you, thinking that lashing back at something that opposes you is right. Can't you see that lashing out at yourself or at anyone else is very, very wrong? Could you start at the very beginning and see the difference between what is right for you and what is wrong for you? You will never know what is right for another human being until you first know what is right for you. And you've been hearing it now for about 25 minutes, what is right for you. You've been to begin hearing about a very practical plan, procedure, that anyone in this room or watching this film, a very practical plan that you could put into operation right now, tonight, till the day, and the day will come, I will guarantee you this if you persist in it, the day will come when all of a sudden you say to yourself, at last, I see that I didn't know what awareness was before. I used the word, I talked about it, I boast about it, I said I'm aware all the time. I now see that I was totally unaware, that I was in this cage of animals going by instead of standing by and simply seeing them pass by. You actually can see yourself standing at a distance from everything that's going on down on the highway. That is, everything that's going on inside of you, which gradually sets you free. Now I'm going to give you a second procedure. We have a bit of time left. I'm going to give you a second procedure which you can take right out into the world. You can take it right into this room during the break, which is coming up in a little bit. And watch how it connects with what we've talked about. This new procedure, this new method that I'm going to give to you, connects very much with you catching your thoughts. And here it is, and you'll see for yourself what I'm talking about. You will find, effective as of right now, throughout your day and night, many, many situations where, when someone asks you a question, you simply answer yes or no. That is it. Now think of all the conversations you have with other people throughout the day, and first let me say, I'm aware there are many when you can't just answer yes or no, because it takes more than that. I'm talking about this. We're so in love with talking, with words, that when someone asks us a question, we leap onto it so eagerly in order to give a short speech. And I will say this to those of you in this room, I'm going to watch and see from now on whether you practice this or not. Someone asks you a question that can be answered simply yes and no, you will answer yes or no. You will answer yes or no. You're in for something. If you really do it. Now, how does this help us to understand the mind? By noting what goes on inside it, down on the highway, so to speak. It means the first time you say just yes or just no, you're going to feel the urging inside of you to say more. All this has to be explored by you personally, because there are 1,000 avenues that you can explore. For example, someone asks you a question, and you're used to just going on with a 10-minute speech over the shortest question, and you just say no, for example. One thing that could happen to you is that you're going to worry that the other person thinks you're mad at them. You said no and stop, and you're usually a blabbermouth. You just said no, and now you stop, and now they're sort of straining you, and you're looking at the other person look at you, because you usually go on, and you're worried that they're worried that they think you're upset or something. Are you following this? Yeah. You have to see it, because it's so individualistic. You got the program? Someone asks you a question, and it can be answered yes or no. Do that and just watch what goes on inside of you. Now, can you practice this all day long at the proper time so that you can finally understand a very profound point, which is this. The first thought is never the problem. It's always the second one. Back to the man sitting in the window. He sees the wild animals going down the highway in front of him. First thought, wild animals. No problem yet, right? Now, if there's something wrong with him, if he identifies with animals, if he was once clawed by a bear in a park or something, when he sees the animals, the second thought is going to come up, wild animals, I'm supposed to go into fear. The second thought has wrecked everything. It has prevented him from simply seeing the animals down there and staying apart from them. Okay, he sees the furniture, all this furniture, and he's furniture-minded for some strange reason. And he says, furniture. Then he says, oh yes, my wife has been nagging me to get new furniture. He's caught, isn't he? What caused him to be caught? He didn't stop at the first thought and see that that was the first thought. He fell asleep, he closed his eyes and went to sleep and went into daydreams. See, first thought is furniture, then the association thought, the next thought is wife nagging over furniture. Now he's distressed, he's unhappy. Do you understand then that anything you see out there in the world doesn't have to trigger off a negative reaction of any kind? You have been given two projects. One, to stand apart from whatever's going through inside you. Simply see it. Don't go into the second thought. See it. Stop it right there by being aware of the first thought. Standing apart from it. Secondly, is a very, very practical exercise which you can carry on for the rest of your life, for that matter. It'll save you a lot of energy, by the way. There's so many side benefits connected with it. Now, if you're a blabbermouth by nature, and that's the way you want to live, you're not going to understand your own mind. Therefore, you will have to pay the penalty in your preference for mental blabbermouthery or with your mouth, physical mouth. Question, final question. You want something better? Sacrifice everything to the invitation of truth to understand your own mind. And God, who is higher than your mind, will do the rest.